evening and welcome to ILTV's Israel Weekly. I'm Steve Leibowitz, happy to be back from my longest time out of the country since the 1980s. Joining me today are Dr. Einat Wilf and Rabbi Dov Lipman. The subjects we will dwell on today include the recent meetings between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Obama, the Palestinian response to Netanyahu's UN-issued invitation for President Abbas to speak in the Israeli Knesset, the meeting between Netanyahu and presidential candidates Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. We open with perhaps the final meeting between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Barack Obama during his presidency. Obama promised to use his final months in office to try to push forward the peace process. Netanyahu assured the president that Israel is a willing partner.
Opportunity to talk about the challenges that arise out of situations like Syria. I'll also be interested in hearing from the Prime Minister his assessment of conditions within Israel and in the West Bank. Obviously, our hearts go out to those who've been injured, both Israeli and Palestinian. Clearly, there is great danger of not just terrorism, but also flare-ups of violence. We do have concerns around settlement activity as well. And our hope is that we can continue to be an effective partner with Israel in finding a path to peace. Obviously, I'm only going to be president for another few months. The Prime Minister will be there quite a bit longer. And our hope will be that in these conversations we get a sense of how Israel sees the next few years, what the opportunities are and what the challenges are, in order to assure that we keep alive the possibility of a stable, secure Israel at peace with its neighbors, and a Palestinian homeland that meets the aspirations of their people.
I want to thank you for the many meetings we've had in which we discussed how to confront common challenges and how to seize common opportunities. The greatest challenge is, of course, the unremitting fanaticism. The greatest opportunity is to advance a durable peace. That's a goal that I and the people of Israel will never give up on. We've been fortunate that in pursuing these two tasks, Israel has no greater friend than the United States of America, and America has no greater.
Dr. Wilf, it's a lame duck Obama administration. Does it have any real chance of doing anything to advance the peace process?
So historically, lame duck presidents have done a lot to advance the process, whereas it was Reagan with recognizing the PLO, which was dramatic. We have Clinton, of course, with Camp David. We have, in some ways, Bush and Olmert with the negotiations, which all have been dramatic in their way and all have been critical points in changing the process. The question is, can it make any lasting difference? And that it can only happen if the American president will do something truly dramatic that goes to the core of what drives the conflict. And sadly, from the president's UN speech, the way he posited Israeli settlements against Palestinian incitement as equal obstacles to peace, I believe that he still does not understand the extent to which Arab rejectionism, and especially the Palestinian Arab belief that Israel can one day disappear. They're clinging to the right of return. All of these things. He doesn't seem to understand how serious it is, how deep it is, and that this has been the reason why to date the Palestinians have never been willing to say yes to anything that would acknowledge a permanent Jewish sovereign presence in a land that they view their own. So if the president truly wants to be effective, people talk about UN Security Council resolutions, a settlement resolutions, a speech. all of these will not matter if they do not include in some way a clear statement by an American president saying that the Arab world, and the Palestinians in particular, have to recognize that the Jewish people have a right to self-determination in a land which is their homeland, that the Palestinians have to recognize that there will not be return to what today is Israel. Clear statements of that sort could make a difference. Anything else that repeats the usual platitudes will change nothing.
Well, Rabbi Lippman, did you hear anything in the comments that Netanyahu made to Obama that indicate that Israel is willing to take any kind of a major step or gesture? I know, I agree with you or not that the Palestinians are not giving any indication of their willingness. What about from our side?
I don't think that there's anything further that Israel, you could expect the Prime Minister to say in that kind of a forum which would indicate anything. Let's also remember, this was not a situation where the two leaders sat down by themselves for a real work meeting, let's try to get something done. It was a photo op. There were other people in the room the entire time, lining the sides of the room. There's a lot of things that go around a meeting which can tell you what's the purpose of the meeting. This was not a let's get together and work together, make progress. This was, it's important that we have this statement that we both support each other before the president leaves office, and this is an important opportunity for that. But this wasn't a situation where here we have our concrete plans, we have our talking points, we're sitting down for a meeting with a lot of prep work beforehand, follow up afterwards. There was none of that. This was for the cameras.
In the past, we saw some body language of Obama that indicated a lot of tension, and this time it looked like mostly sleepiness.
Yes, he seemed at this point exhausted. In some ways, perhaps even bored, like he just couldn't keep saying the same things over and over again. But really it just seems that he was exhausted of the whole thing and he couldn't bring himself to even go through the motions.
As opposed to the Prime Minister, where you see a certain level of excitement and enthusiasm, because this is the stage that he needed to be on for Israel, not for anything else. And I'm sure that the people who analyze body language will be able to give the full breakdown, but even the handshake, people were talking about how the motions and the handshake indicated exactly what Einat was just talking about. Of President Obama just, okay, I have to be here, and Prime Minister Netanyahu, I'm excited to be here because this is an important step for me.
We're almost finished with this section, but I wonder how, Obama, after he leaves office, will probably be writing his memoirs. I wonder how he will remember Netanyahu fondly.
Well, I mean, it's no secret that the personal relationship has not been great, but he might over time have a grudging appreciation for Netanyahu's understanding of the geopolitics of the region.
And the other thing I want to say is that with all the personal issues between them, and that certainly has been talked about a lot, it was important for this to happen to cement the relationship. And the relationship has been strong in terms of the military sharing and the intelligence sharing and also the financial help. It's all been in place, and therefore there's no catastrophe to the Israel-U.S. relationship because of their personal quarrels with one another.
And indeed, they signed an agreement for $38
Correct.
billion. Well, in the final, speaking at the UN General Assembly, Prime Minister Netanyahu invited PA President Mahmoud Abbas to address the Knesset. He also told the world body that he welcomes the Arab Peace Initiative and is ready to negotiate all final status issues, and he told the delegates that in the not-too-distant future, they will vote pro-Israel. Let's give a listen.
The UN, begun as a moral force, has become a moral farce. So when it comes to Israel at the UN, you'd probably think nothing will ever change, right? Well, think again. You see, everything will change, and a lot sooner than you think. The change will happen in this hall because back home, your governments are rapidly changing their attitudes towards Israel. And sooner or later, that's going to change the way you vote on Israel at the UN. Ladies and gentlemen, Israel is ready, I am ready, to negotiate all final status issues. But one thing I will never negotiate: our right to the one and only Jewish state. I believe, as never before, that changes taking place in the Arab world today offer a unique opportunity to advance that peace. I commend President Assisi of Egypt for his efforts to advance peace and stability in our region. Israel welcomes the spirit of the Arab Peace Initiative and welcomes a dialogue with Arab states to advance a broader peace. I believe that for that broader peace to be fully achieved, the Palestinians have to be part of it. I'm ready to begin negotiations to achieve this today, not tomorrow, not next week, today. President Abbas spoke here an hour ago. Wouldn't it be better if instead of speaking past each other, we were speaking to one another? President Abbas, instead of railing against Israel at the United Nations in New York, I invite you to speak to the Israeli people at the Knesset in Jerusalem. And I would gladly come to speak to the Palestinian parliament.
Of course, Mahmoud Abbas has already rejected the Knesset invitation of Prime Minister Netanyahu, but he claims he is willing to meet Netanyahu anytime, anywhere. Besides getting a chance to hear Netanyahu's brilliant oratory skills, what can be taken away from this speech?
I hope I don't come across too cynical in what I'm about to say, but a speech in the UN, there's no ambassador sitting in that room, in my opinion, that's sitting there to, okay, Prime Minister Netanyahu, now convince me of Israel's side in these disputes. Whoever is supporting us, whoever is not, and there's a lot of backroom work that has to be done to generate support. It's a speech, the Prime Minister is excellent at giving these speeches, but it's very much, in my opinion, geared for back here, to shore up support here, as he's the Prime Minister, he's strong, look at how he speaks for Israel, and it works. People respond that way, people see him in that way, but it's not something where there's anything effective that's taking place within the United Nations. We all know that when it comes to the Palestinian issue, at least this is my personal belief, there's no Palestinian leader that on his own can make the concessions that Israel needs for Israel's security on all the core issues, and I not mentioned some of them before. There's no Palestinian leader strong enough to do that. It's going to require some kind of an international effort, or more from our perspective, and now I'm speaking politically, the Arab states being involved. But bilateral negotiations at this point will just be, again, a photo op and nice, but wouldn't actually yield anything. But in terms of the UN speech, nothing moves on any of the issues, in my opinion, based on the speech. But again, a very effective job for the leader of Israel to represent Israel and demonstrate a strong Israel and demonstrate an Israel that wants to move forward in any way possible to resolve the conflict. But nothing more than that.
Not in the past, we would see a large number of delegates getting up and walking out when an Israeli prime minister would take the podium. The Prime Minister has been involved in diplomatic initiatives like his trip to Africa and so on, and people have spoken about the possibility that as time goes by, Israel will actually have many more friends around the world. Is that happening yet?
It is in the process of happening. Perhaps Netanyahu has been too quick to claim the rewards of this process, but it's definitely happening. You can see it, for example, with a country like India, which is discussing it. If India, previously the leader of the non-aligned movement, if India changes its voting, and it doesn't have to move from a no to yes, it can move to abstentions, that can make a big difference. Many other countries will follow. There is an understanding of things that could be done in Africa, the Middle East is changing. The Prime Minister does have an understanding of geopolitics, of power. He's taking advantage of opportunities that he's seeing, and he's also, at the moment, trying to make sure that those changes on the diplomatic front, on the economic front, change to votes at the UN.
Dov, you're a party leader. Has often spoken out about foreign affairs issues. We don't even have a foreign minister in this country. I mean, how much longer can that go on? I mean, we're taking a beating around the world in so many different ways, and we still don't have a foreign minister fighting the world battles.
Yeah, there's no doubt that I'm very critical of that, and we're very critical of that. We don't see any real overriding strategy, both in terms of foreign affairs, but also in what we call the public diplomacy. Both Anat and myself are both involved in this effort, and we travel around, and we're making the case for Israel. There's no organized strategy on a government level from a foreign minister on down, using the ambassadors as satellites, then getting to all the organizations. There's a lot of wonderful people doing a lot of wonderful things. But this $30 million sitting in a ministry that's run by the public security minister, who's quite busy providing us with our security, and he's a wonderful person, but there's no real effort on a government level. I think that we're failing in that mission, and that hurts Israel's cause. So yes, the prime minister is running around trying to do wonderful things, but there's only so much one person can do in this effort, and there's no real organized effort, and no real, from my perspective, strategy about how we're going to do that, because it's not just the governments in the UN, it's also on campuses, and it's also in other places where we have to be reaching, and I don't think we're really getting our message out there, and it requires a real thinking, real strategy, real messaging to make that happen.
You're trying to make that message, both of you are, as you mentioned. How badly is the fact that there is no foreign minister hurting us? Or do we manage anyway? We manage to convince whoever we can manage to convince, and we make our case wherever we can. Does it matter that we don't have a foreign minister?
For that, no. Because a foreign minister in Israel traditionally has been the political rival of the prime minister, and as a result has typically been deprived of power. So the current foreign minister, who's also the prime minister, happens to actually have power that foreign ministers did not have in the past, and he is waging a diplomatic effort that previous foreign ministers, not all, could have come up with. The problem is that in the areas where we are weak, which is in Western Europe, in liberal America, on campuses, among the left in general, he is not the best bearer of the message. We need someone who can make the message the liberal case for Israel. The case for Israel is an open, inclusive society that seeks peace, that opposes the settlements. And at the moment, Netanyahu cannot make that claim.
All right, well, in an effort to avoid the appearance of taking sides in the U.S. presidential race, Prime Minister Netanyahu met with both candidates, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And after the closed meetings, the Trump campaign promised that if elected, he would recognize United Jerusalem as the Israeli capital. We've heard that before. And the Clinton campaign promised to veto anti-Israel resolutions in the UN and to fight BDS. Try, if you could, to envision a Trump candidacy. Start with him. What would it mean for Israel?
The main thing about Trump is that we don't know what it means. That is the key issue for so many policymakers. It's not clear what his foreign policy will be. Those who have tried to eke out a coherent foreign policy agenda have claimed that he will basically be someone who does not intervene around the world, that takes America to America, that he perhaps might not be very reliable, as it will not be clear what he tries to achieve. So I think Trump is clearly a big question mark. Now, a lot of people say they want the question mark. They want something, he will change things. Even though you said we've heard before about the Jerusalem thing, Trump is the first person that you might think he might actually do it because he's so unpredictable. So he's the one person who might actually do the unpredictable thing of recognizing Jerusalem.
Well, what would happen if he did it? If he just announced the day after taking office in January, he announces that he is going to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. How would the world react?
The first question is how the State Department would react. That's the first question. That's the State Department policy, which has been holding it back, all along. I've said for a while, and I've spoken to ambassadors from other countries, that all it will take is one, in my opinion, strong country to say we're making that move, and then others, I think, would actually follow suit. It's logical. It doesn't make any sense. We're not talking about Eastern Jerusalem. We're talking about a plot of land that's set aside in Western Jerusalem, which everyone recognizes is Israel's, and any final settlement is going to be Israel. So I do actually think, if anybody does have the courage to make it happen, that not only will there not be international disagreement with it, I think that others will follow because it just makes sense. What other country country is dictated where its capital is and where the embassy should go. It doesn't make any sense. So if it happens, it'll be great. Again, I don't hold out much hope, not because of Donald Trump, just because of the history of people who believed in it passionately. I do believe there are other presidents who believed in this with passion, but there are forces on the ground within the United States and within the government there where they decide this is not the battle which I want to wage right now. So that's why I'm not hopeful.
And not when I was in the States now, I was talking to a lot of people. I didn't hear a whole lot of love for Trump, but when it came to Hillary Clinton, a lot of the Jewish supporters of Israel were spewing what I would call venom, tying her to Obama, who they view as anti-Israel. Many American Jews do, and Hillary just as bad. Put it into some perspective for us. Is Hillary bad for Israel?
Absolutely not. I think Hillary has been remarkably wise. I had a few opportunities when I was in the Knesset to observe her in action, to see her in meetings. I actually think she was far wiser in that position than later when the American president worked with Kerry. She realized, for example, that the Israelis and Palestinians were not ready for a historical end of conflict agreement. And unlike Kerry, she was wise enough to understand that you don't push the sides to do it. This is why during her time, this was the least violent time between Israelis and Palestinians. So I think she has a keen understanding of world politics, of geopolitics, a real friendship for Israel, a support for Israel. So she is great for Israel, and certainly I think she would make a great American president. And as always, a strong America, and also a strong America that cares about the world, which Hillary does, is important for Israel.
I know that Bill Clinton was still quite well respected here in this country, and maybe she'll make him a kind of a roaming ambassador of sorts. Dov, are you concerned about a Clinton presidency?
So, as I've been doing week after week here, as someone who's still involved in Israeli politics, I'm going to punt on the question of the specific candidates. But I will say this. We're seeing an effort made in Israel, I don't know if all the viewers even recognize this, to get people to vote for each of the candidates, meaning we see Republican effort in Israel and Democratic effort in Israel. They really do view the voters in Israel as possible swing voters in some of the swing states. And that's something which is fascinating to see. And both sides claiming that the other one will be catastrophic for Israel. I feel that the Israeli-United States relationship will survive regardless of who the personality is in the presidency. There's enough at work there, and I spent enough time at Capitol Hill to realize that it's strong. My concern right now is 25 years from now, when the kids who are on college campuses today are the ones who are on Capitol Hill. That's what I'm concerned about. What's happening right now, it's strong, it'll survive, regardless of who the president is.
Well, you're both future Knesset members, I would hope. So you're not going to tell us who you support, of course. Will you be up tonight at 4 a.m. Israel time watching the debate?
No, but I'll wake up tomorrow morning and watch it on YouTube.
And will you?
Sometimes my children keep me up at night, so if they do, I'll go watch it.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank our guests, Rabbi Dov Lipman and Dr. Anat Wilf. I'm Steve Leibowitz, and thanks for being with us at Israel Weekly.